Today, I actually want to talk to you about speaking English. So, as a non-native speaker who's already been through that journey, I know that exact feeling when you feel like your English sounds really good in your head, or you might be brilliant on paper or when it comes to solving grammar exercises, but when it comes to speaking, you feel like your English is not on the same level, and even when you feel like you're trying your absolute best, you still kind of like feel you're stuck. So in this video, we'll go through 4 key points that will help you take your spoken English to the next level and become a confident speaker. So my very first advice to you is try to learn to think in English in your head. Do not translate from your native language. I think this is actually one of the most common mistakes, because if you're trying to translate from your native language, first of all, the whole process is kind of like slowing you down. And the second thing is, when you're trying to translate, it doesn't come as natural, because language is actually a way of thinking. It's not like you're only translating words, it's a way of communication, a way of thinking. It opens up so many different perspectives on how you can actually view the world. Think about it as you are developing a separate part in your brain that's processing information in English, that's thinking in English, and that's helping you speak in English. You need to basically live and breathe it. So in order to actually improve that process, I would say try to immerse yourself fully in that language. That would be watching movies in English, or listening to podcasts, or if you are a music enthusiast, also listen to English songs. It can be very difficult at first, I do understand, because I've been through that, but the more you practice, the more you also push yourself on that, I think eventually you will definitely improve. And there are even scientific studies that actually support and suggest with evidence that people who speak different languages, they kind of like have different personalities as well. So think about it as if you're bringing out a different personality, some superhero in you that could deal with English situations a lot more confidently and could help you navigate your way through. Now, the second key point why your English is not improving is probably because you are too afraid to make mistakes. So my advice to you is go out there and make mistakes, because that's the way how you're going to improve your English. If you're not going to make mistakes, you're not going to improve. As simple as that. It's actually with any skill that you want to learn in life. In order to perfect that skill, you have to practice and make mistakes. It's like the same with riding a bike. If you're not gonna fall, you're not gonna master that skill at one point. Or if you're trying to learn how to ski, and let's say you're watching YouTube videos explaining to you the techniques how you can ski or skate, but unless you go out there and actually fall so many times, you're not gonna be good at that. So it's the same. If you are reading so many books in English and also listening to podcasts or like watching movies in English, unless you are forcing or pushing yourself to practice what you learned, your English is always going to be stuck. And that's one of the things that so many people don't feel comfortable about, is putting themselves out there and actually making mistakes. You are too afraid because you think the others might laugh at you because your English is not really good at this stage, or they might be judging you. If you are never prepared to face that fear at first, you will always be stuck in the same situation. But if you go over that barrier, you have to endure it for some time, and then eventually you will improve. So it's only like a temporary, unpleasant situation where you might feel others are judging you, but trust me, no one really cares. And the same thing, I would say, as much as you are willing to put yourself out there and practice, you need to be open to criticism and also to corrections. And you should actually appreciate if someone corrects you. And even those who laugh at you, I promise you, those people are always going to be stuck with that kind of attitude without really moving and improving in life. And I promise you, you will be the one who will be eventually laughing at them. And I think actually when you make a mistake, it's a really good thing, because it will help you remember, especially if it was something embarrassing. You could actually remember it and it will stick in your head, And I think because there is some emotions attached or associated with it, it was embarrassing at that point, so you don't want to go through that and it sticks in your head. I can tell you the exact situations when I learned certain words actually. I remember this time when I was going to work, so I had my bike. I used to cycle to work, and then unfortunately that day I fell off my bike. And then when I got to work, I was trying to explain to my manager that I was late because I had like this incident. So I said I slided with my bike, and then he corrected me and he said like, oh, you mean you slid? So that day I learned that the verb to slide in the past, it is wrong to say to slided, but the correct form to say is slid. And the same, I also once went to a workshop. We were split into pairs, and then you get given a card that you have to discuss. And in that card there was this question, what do you think about prejudices? And I didn't even know what a prejudice is, but there was a girl sitting across from me and I felt so embarrassed to say that I didn't know what prejudice means. And I just played it along and I said, I think that prejudices are a good thing. And then I remember the look on her face, it's like, what is wrong with this guy? But yeah, after that I made sure that I knew exactly what prejudice means. And if you don't know what a prejudice is, it's basically like an unreasonable or unfair opinion that you might have about some things without enough thoughts or knowledge about that topic. But basically, in a nutshell, I just gave you a few examples how I went about making mistakes, and I have so many other stories as well, which are probably a bit more embarrassing. But my advice to you is that embarrassment is only temporary. Go out there and make mistakes, because that's the way how you can actually learn and improve. Alright, now moving to the third advice, or one of the reasons why your English is not really as good is because simply you are not practicing enough. So many people, when they are learning, they mainly rely on books, textbooks, solving grammar questions and then writing essays, which is the way so many exams are actually structured in so many different educational systems or different countries. They don't give you that much opportunity to practice speaking English, because this speaking English itself is a separate skill. No matter how good or brilliant you are on paper or like reading or listening, the speaking itself is a separate skill. So when you are learning, whether you are reading from a book or watching a YouTube video or a movie, and then you feel like you came across some new word or expression, look it up, see what it means, and then write it down. But that's not enough. After having it written down, you still need to practice it and then try to use it. Because if you are only writing things down on a piece of paper and then leaving it behind and never actually looking at it ever again, then you're not going to improve. You still need to practice. And the key thing here is consistency. So when you are practicing, try to also practice on a regular basis, on a consistent basis. Even if it's only 15 minutes that you could dedicate per day, I guarantee you that consistency will always be intensity over the long run. It's like going to the gym. You don't just go to the gym like once in a month, or like you just watch how to do it. You still have to go there, hit the dumbbells, do some push-ups, and that's how you're going to grow your muscles. It's the same thing. You need to practice. Whatever you are learning, you need to put it into practice. I know that it might be difficult to find a situation where you could actually put that into practice. My advice to you is try to join a speaking club, for example, or find a study partner. You can agree with your friend that today, wherever you're going to a cafe or any place, you can only speak in English. Or my third advice, there are also these cafe languages. You can go there, meet people with the same interest, and you only speak in the language that you want to learn. So there are so many different ways. If you feel like this is not accessible to you, my fourth advice is actually you can speak to yourself in English. As crazy as it sounds, it's a really useful technique, and I used to do this a lot. I know I might sound like a crazy person walking down the street or just sitting by myself and having a conversation with myself, but I think it's definitely an effective method that could help you practice if you you don't have any of those accessible to you. So practice, practice, practice. And don't get focusing too much on grammar rules and thinking about all these different rules. Don't start memorizing, okay, if there is an E, then I have to pronounce it this way. Okay, if it's negative, it's like you end up doing maths in your head rather than actually learning the language. Because all these different rules that we are taught, if you actually talk to any native speaker and you ask them, okay, do you think like we have to apply this rule here, or do we have to apply this irregular rule? And then they were like, what are you talking about? Because for them, they learn that way by practicing, and it comes natural to them. They don't even think about the rules behind the language. And I think you should rather focus on learning the language that way, and it comes by practice, rather than focusing too much on grammar, starting to memorize and learn all these different rules. I mean, they do help, but don't think just like practicing grammar exercises on paper is just gonna magically help you improve your spoken English. It's all about practice. So you have to be practicing all the time, and don't overthink it. Over time, it will just start coming up naturally to you as well. Now that brings us to the fourth key advice, and as harsh as it sounds, the reason why your English is not improving is because you simply don't have enough motivation. Because trust me, when you want something and you have enough determination and you dedicate yourself, you will always find a way. There is a saying that where there is a will, there is a way. So if you are really determined, you have enough motivation, and you dedicate at least some time where you are practicing, eventually you will improve. If you are struggling with the motivation, find topics that you are really interested about, and then try to talk about those subjects in English. So whether you are into fitness or reading books or any kind of other sport, try to explain whatever you know in your native tongue. Try and practice that in English. Try to speak about it with the same passion that you have about that particular subject in English. And you can just speak to yourself about it, but just like practice saying those same things that you are passionate about. Find the right vocabulary, dedicate some time, find the right vocabulary if you don't know how to do it at first. At first, there is no harm in actually repeating, just repeating. If you see someone explaining something in a certain way and you like it and it's about your subject, and then try to use your words and practice. Or if it's your favorite TV show, similarly, just try and get some vocabulary from there and then use it, or just talk about that show in English. Get the right motivation, start with the subjects that interest you the most, and then try to push yourself. And also find a group or some people who share the same interests and have the same goals to improve their English, because they could be a lot of help. It always gives you that motivation when you do things with other people who share the same interest. Now, coming to the end of the video, I hope that you could take some key lessons from my learning journey, and I hope that the advice that I share with you today, you take it on board and try and put it into action. And I promise you that if you start taking action or pushing yourself, doing it, even if it's something slightly better than what you did yesterday, and consistently try to improve, eventually you will get to that level where you can communicate and speak confidently and fluently. So thank you for listening to my advice, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you have some ways that helped you improve, or there are certain things that you feel like you practiced but you are still stuck with, share them in the comments, and I try to give you some advice if I've dealt with something like that before. So thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.